What's up, everybody? As you know, we were streaming a little RCQ prep the other day, or I'd say the other day, like yesterday. And Jun Shadow is one of the decks we wanted to try out. Got through a couple matches on stream, so if you wanted to see those live matches, you're welcome to head on over to twitch.tv/the_control freak. And you can see a couple of live matches. Unfortunately, we did have to cut it off early for work obligations on my side. So I wanted to go ahead and recap that league so you can see how it went. Maybe if you're thinking about playing Jun Shadow in one of the upcoming weekends, then this will be a pretty good idea of how the deck plays out. The list, a little bit different from the last couple lists I've run. We are running Questing Druid in the main to try out along with the Terrace Under. Those are kind of the two of the bigger flex slots in the main. But the rest of the deck, so many 4-ofs. The consistency is through the roof. So 4 Bobble, 4 Shadow, 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Bolt, 4 Unholy Heat, 4 Ragavan, 4 Bowmaster, 4 Tarmogoyf, 2 Kroxa, 2 Terminate, 3 Fable, that Questing Druid, the Terrace Under. In the sideboard, a Magus and a Blood Moon. Magus a lot better against decks that might have Beseiju. 1 Teamer Battle Rage for the unfair stuff. A second copy of Terrace Under. 1 Collector Roof, a Back to Nature that I'm trying out, 2 Veil of Summer for basically scam. We know how popular that matchup is. Third copy of Terminate, 2 EE, an Unlicensed Hearse, 2 Nihil Spellbomb, and Giganta as our companion. Some of the things I really love about this list. 1, having access to Giganta in the sideboard, along with like the 3 Fables and the 4 Ragavan, makes it really easy to play through a Blood Moon. And so easy, in fact, you get to play Blood Moon of your own. And that's kind of your way of cheesing out some of the really bad matchups, is giving yourself that oops, I win button of like Ragavan into Blood Moon. We get a whole bunch of good artifact and enchantment hate with Terrace Under, Collector Roof, Back to Nature, as well as like the EEs to a lesser extent. Terrace Under, I do think, is an extraordinarily flexible card. That's why I don't mind playing one in the main. We've seen so many matches that not only have we gotten to hit things like an Urza Saga, an Expedition map, but we've also gotten to kick it and take out Furies and Murktide Regents and Omnaths, hit the Ring, whatever the case may be, hit Beanstalks. So it does have a lot of usefulness. But you don't want to hear about all that. Let's just go ahead and hop into the matches so you can see how those go and decide if Jun Shadow is a good fit for you. Still a little under the weather, so if I sniffle, I apologize. All right, match number 1. We are on the draw. Pretty bad starting hand. I'll try to go over the mulligan decisions a little bit more. But the first hand just being extraordinarily reactive with no second land, so we can't guarantee we get down Goyf for Kroxa turn 2. So throw that back, keep a 6 that's got Ragavan, 2 lands, Heat, Kroxa. So we've got a really good ability to build into the mid to late game with this. Sometimes you have to keep hands that like give up a little bit of staying power on the first couple of turns to ensure a good late game, and that's kind of what this does. Like, we give up that turn 2 Goyf, but we've got the ability to kind of curve out into a Kroxa. You have to take a hit off Ragavan, unfortunately, but that does get us closer to Shadow as well. On turn 2, you really love seeing your opponent Thoughtseize when you've got the removal spell, because that means they can't play out like a Dauthi or a Bowmaster and kind of push their game plan forward. Opponent is empty-handed, whiff off Ragavan, so we hit the land, which means we get Kroxa back. About as good of a position as you can get, because now if our opponent draws dead, they have to chump block with Ragavan. Unfortunately, our opponent does not draw dead. I think Terminate was about the best draw they could get. Now, we are fairly close to getting Kroxa back. We can find like a removal spell for Ragavan. We can potentially get it back. Fortunately, them finding a creature off the top of our library means that any black or red spell from them grows the questing druid to lethal. Can't really afford to play around Bowmaster, so we're not going to play around Bowmaster. And this attack means they likely did not whiff. That ends up being accurate. So opponent sneaks out that game one. That top deck Terminate really did us in. Sideboarding against Scam. I'm kind of on this like all the Ragavan out, most of the Thoughtseize out plan at the moment. I think that we've got enough ways of dealing with like a scammed threat that I don't need to keep in all my Thoughtseizes. They're just so dead after the first few turns. Bringing in Nihil Spellbombs and Licensed Hearse, Veil of Summers, the extra Terminate, and the extra Terra Sunder. Terra Sunder can hit Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Blood Moon, can kick it and hit a scam threat. So, a bunch of good stuff about it. Missed the third land drop. Oh, yawning. Missed the third land drop, unfortunately, but we do have this Seek the Beast available. This is kind of an interesting game because there's a bunch of lines in here that I was really thrown off by. Like my opponent, Kate commanding my Nihil Spellbomb when I have mana up. And it almost felt like they were playing around Veil of Summer right there. Which, I don't know, like nobody's playing Veil of Summer. So it felt a little, I don't want to say spooky. I hate accusing anybody of like stream sniping, but it was like odd timing for a K command. And the only thing you're really playing around is Veil of Summer. You know what I mean? Like K command on your own instep in response to a fetch when they still have the mana available to pop the spell bomb. But either way, we do get to Seek the Beast. Now, this is a kind of interesting line, I thought. I have this Unholy Heat that I hit off of the Seek the Beast. So I could have just gone for the Unholy Heat in response to my Fable trigger. So I'd get to ditch some stuff and draw. But what we did was we waited, we saw our draw, found the Bowmaster, decided not to go for the heat and draw anything so that we can kind of triple up on the grief and progress our board. When I say triple up, I don't really mean like throw our entire hand away. I just mean we get to play out the Hearse, Bowmaster to ping the grief, and then Unholy Heat without Delirium with the Unlicensed Hearse up. So if they do have like an Undying effect, we get to still kill it. But we still get to like progress our board with Bowmaster, Unlicensed Hearse. Kind of trade off the Unholy Heat for the grief. Unfortunately, they do untap and have the Fury. So you might think we're in a bad position. You might think, oh, how are you going to get out of this where your opponent's got Fury and you've got nothing except a couple of derpy 1/1s. And now they got a Castle Lockthwain. And I'd say it's fine. Like, what could our opponent possibly do that we're worried about here? Now, I do want to try my absolute best to not go down to 1 and put myself dead just like a top deck Bowmaster. I'll put myself dead to a Bolt. I can't really play around that one, but can play around a Bowmaster. So we'll try our best to do so. My opponent's not attacking him with a Fury. From my guess is because they don't want to trade off the Fury for just the Unlicensed Hearse. And like now the Hearse outgrows the Fury. So I'm even less worried. You have to play things a little passively. I could have like copied Shadow there and attacked in with the copy. But I take myself off of, what was it? There were a lot of plays that forced me to go down to 1 life. And again, I really don't want to go down to 1 life if I can avoid it. So I decided just holding up Tear Asunder for the Dolthy was a little bit better. Opponent does find an EE to be able to take out our Shadow. So I use the mana off the Giganta here so that I can copy something with the Reflection without pinging myself. Got to remember that Giganta can only pay for generic or non-generic costs. So if I kick the Tear Asunder without the Giganta, I couldn't make a copy of anything with it. We knew they had the EE, and if I attacked with a Shadow, they'd blow it. So I decided to try to copy the Questing Druid, maybe like top deck a spell or something. Could crack the Fable there, or crack the Peatland. Decide to wait and do it in response to this Locthwain. There's a decent chance they don't have a Bowmaster if they didn't use it like into turn or anything, but it's always non-zero. They get a little greedy attacking him with the Fury, which just means we need to top deck a removal spell, and we get to kill off the token and attack in for lethal. Love to see it. Kind of steal that one a little bit. On to game 3. Really good match so far. You love these like long drawn out decisions matter matches. So see a Goyf on top with Bobble. I do want to keep that. Got Unholy Heat for the Dolthy. Decided to go ahead and get a basic Swamp just to play around Blood Moon a little bit. Might not even matter. Definitely doesn't matter if our opponent just scoops to the Goyf attacking in. Which could mean that they had like a Grief. But I'll just rewind a little bit. Again, I don't like thinking someone is stream sniping, but this really feels like stream sniping. Like 3 mana, you've made 1 play, you got 4 cards in hand, you knew about the Unholy Heat and played the Dolthy, and then you scooped to me top decking a Terminate. So maybe they had like a Grief and were planning on playing that and just like gave up that plan after I top decked the Terminate and attacked in. I don't know. Either way, round number 2. Another Ragavan deck. I'm assuming Murktide with Spire Bluff into Ragavan. So far, nothing is telling me otherwise until I see Sacred Foundry. So now I know it's like a fair Breach deck or something. Usually they're in the Jeskai color spectrum. We do have a Thoughtseize next turn, so we can like Thoughtseize, try to take another answer to Ragavan, play out our second Ragavan, maybe chump block or trade. Not even chump block. Yep. So we see Iteration, Preordain, another Ragavan. Take the Iteration just to try to cut off their draws to like another Bolt, another Heat, something like that. Magic Online doing its normal little, get a little laggy thing. Thoughtseize of try to snag anything left in hand. Bowmaster to ping down Ragavan, and now we are kind of off to the races, except for a 1 ring. If you have seen any of my videos recently, you know my disdain for the 1 ring. It's just such a horrendous design. And people will say like, oh, Bowmasters is a great counter to the 1 ring. Sometimes. A lot of times it's not. Because like, the decks that are playing the 1 ring are going to play answers to Bowmaster. And as long as you find one, then Bowmaster doesn't really do anything. Like right here, opponent found one. Now they're able to just draw a billion cards. Even worse, they're able to find all the removal spells that they need to clear out our side of the board. I do get Kroxa back, so we get to force them into like needing to find something off the One Ring this turn. And they do. So they have Breach, Triple Bolt from the yard, which is enough to kill us. So on to game 2. Sideboarding against the Fair Breach deck. I just boarded out a lot of the spot removal. Like, they still have some creatures, but I figured if I just have them, or gave them, like, less dead cards in my hand. Because, yeah, they have creatures, but they also just have, like, the One Ring to Fairy like this. All that kind of stuff. Thoughtseize. We do see a Preordain. They only have 2 lands, so I'm kind of hoping maybe we can just high roll them missing a 3rd land drop for a couple turns or something. Clearly, it's not a guaranteed plan, but it's a maybe I can just slow the game down a little bit. Get myself to Kroxa. Opponent does end up firing off this counterspell on the Bowmaster, which means any land off the top could have escaped Kroxa. No land, but Ragavan's kind of a land. Like a land adjacent. Still on 2 cards. Reasonable chance that at this point our opponent's top decked like another counterspell. There we go. Decided to just hard cast the Ragavan because I could dash, but I'm just dashing it into the Unholy Heat, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I don't want to use up my treasure token on this Lightning Bolt because they have a Ragavan too. So I don't want to use up the treasure token on the Lightning Bolt after they Unholy Heat my Ragavan because I want to be able to escape Kroxa. Now they've got a Rag. Probably another counterspell the way they're playing this. Yep. So counterspell is took. We decided to just pop the Spell Bomb to stop this Breach. Their last 2 cards are Breach, One Ring, Unknown. Last 3. Preordain finds a Bobble. Bobble draws. Again, the way this is played, I'm kind of assuming they saw another counterspell on top. So, 3rd counterspell, yep. They're down to Breach and the One Ring again. EE on 2, pretty solid. Dash in with the Ragavan. We'll get to go ahead and escape the Kroxa. Probably take out the Underworld Breach because they hit the land for the One Ring. They basically win. So, little Darcy action. He gets popped. And find the land for the One Ring. Like, I'm not really surprised by this because we're on turn 9. Like, they were going to find the land for the One Ring eventually. But usually you kind of hope that there's a little bit of a missing out in the middle. But just top decking like counterspell after counterspell and Unholy Heat, kind of tough. But you keep playing because, hey, we do have Kroxa in the bin. Might help something out in the future. We hit a bolt off the top of their library. Now all we have to do is fade a ring draw for a bolt, and we do. So our complaining about the One Ring pays off. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And we get to go to game 3. Bad hand. Can't keep playing with just Thoughtseize and no pressure. I would definitely say like one of the highlights of the Jun Shadow archetype is the pressure. So you almost always have some sort of threat on the board fairly quickly. We do find a Ragavan, so at least we're able to like provide something that our opponent has to deal with. It's not great, but whatever. If we find another fetch land, we can shadow, like fetch, shock, shadow, and then hold up, bolt ourselves in response to their bolt. They'd still have EE, but we got to take things like one step at a time. If we can nullify one removal spell and force them to use 2 on our shadow, that's a big plus. All right, so I'm sure somebody's going to ask themselves here or make some comment about like, why didn't you get Stomping Ground earlier and play Thoughtseize off the swamp? Like, you didn't get green mana, so you're getting punished for getting this Goyflate. So I get that argument. The counter argument would be turn 2 Shadow is fetch, shock, Thoughtseize. So if I turn 1 basic swamp Thoughtseize and turn 2 top deck another fetch land, I can't play out a shadow. But if I turn 1 fetch, shock Thoughtseize, go down to 15 and rip a fetch land off the top, I can turn 2 shadow and hold up like bolt myself. So if I see a hand that's just ring, ring, expressive iteration, lightning bolt, Teferi or something like that, then I probably want to take that aggressive line to get a shadow down as soon as possible. So yes, I'm intentionally giving up on green mana right off the bat in the hopes that I can top deck a fetch land and get shadow down on turn 2. Since it's my only threat in hand, I kind of need to be proactive about getting it online. Play out shadow, holding up bolt. Opponent did just see us bolt ourselves, so I think it's pretty unlikely that they go for a bolt on our shadow. Because we know they have bolt, so why would we play out a shadow into like a known removal spell? Especially when we're like failing to put more pressure on board. So yep, they untap, go for the EE. Back in. They go ahead and pop the EE. EE, Engineered Explosives. Why is that word so tough for me today? Play out Ragavan gets bolted, so they've got 2 unknown cards in hand. They've got 1 unknown card in hand, 1 unknown off the top of our library. Hit a Stomping Ground. Oh, this congestion's so bad. Stomping Ground, really rough because we do only have 3 green sources in the deck. Stomping Ground, an Overgrown Tomb, and a Nurturing Peatland. Technically, all the fetches can get Overgrown Tomb, so it's not the end of the world, but we are getting a little low on life, and if we have to fetch and shock to find one of those, it makes life a little more difficult. Fable, great top deck. So we can not only get a Shaman token, but we can loot away some of these dead green cards. Darcy, Seek the Beast, looking for a green land. We do not find one. Do, however, find a Lightning Bolt for the Darcy. So even board. I say even board. We've got kind of like an advantage now. We've got threats on board. We've got Reflection to copy Bowmaster in case they found a 1 ring right here. Prismatic Ending, pretty solid. But hey, we've got lethal on board next turn despite this. Just No ring. No ring. They do find a removal spell for the Goyf. The Teferi. I thought this was really heads up of them. So they could have Teferi bounced like the Bowmaster or Teferi bounced the army token. Instead, they went for Teferi bounce the Questing Druid, which means not only is Lightning Bolt lethal, but now Ragavan is lethal. So, pretty heads up on their side. Thankfully for us, they whiff, and we have lethal Bowmaster plus Orc Army token to improve to 2-0. Round 3, on the play, removal spell into Goyf into Fable. About as good as you can ask. Basic Swamp Thoughtseize means very likely mono black, one of the worst matchups any deck that I play can have. And if they're taking Fable, that probably means they've got an answer to the Goyf, which they do. We're a little low on pressure. They're just going to start Field of Ruining us. I 100% believe this deck is just like the bane of my existence. It's just everything they do feels like something I don't want to deal with. They got chump blockers for days with Bowmaster. They've got a ton of spot removal. Blowing up lands every turn. Decided to draw despite the Bowmaster because I just kind of need like another fetch land. But I've been doing so much complaining about One Ring decks on Magic Online and on stream recently. And I know not everybody like shares my my hatred of the One Ring, but it's less so that I hate the card itself. I think the card itself is like horribly designed and shouldn't exist. But it's here. I can't really do much about it existing. But I think the thing that I hate more than anything is the play patterns that the One Ring incentivizes, which are just these like whatever you can to survive play patterns. Like, we don't actually care about winning the game. We are just going to pack our decks so full of things that say, I don't lose. And to me, that doesn't feel like Magic. I mean, I always feel like a Magic deck should have that proactive mentality of I'm trying to accomplish something. And the Ring decks don't feel like you're trying to accomplish something. They feel like, hey, I'm just going to draw 12 cards and I'll figure it out from there. Because if you had a specific plan of like what you're trying to draw to, then you wouldn't really need the Ring. You would just find things that help get that thing going. You know what I mean? The opponent knows about our Bowmaster, so it doesn't look like they're wanting to flash in their own Bowmaster. March of Wretched Sorrow. If I didn't mention sideboarding against Mono Black, bunch of spot removal comes out. Like, I'll usually keep in maybe a couple bolts and a couple unholy heats or something like that. But Veil of Summers are definitely coming in. I might board in Collector Oof just to have an extra threat, as well as being able to shut off the One Ring. But it's more about game plan than your sideboarding, and your game plan is just like throw bodies at them and hope they don't hit damnation. You have to have pressure. I'll bring in Blood Moon and Magus. There's a chance you can cheese them off some black mana if they have an opening hand with just like Urborg, Field of Ruin, Coffers or something. Then you might be able to just squeeze out a little Blood Moon value. But with the One Ring and Karn the Great Creator, like Blood Moon cannot be your only game plan. You have to have pressure. You're not going to be able to just cheese them out with Moon. So see a Bowmaster here. That's pretty good, but we do have a couple cards off Kroxa, except Cling to Dust kind of ruins that. So the joy of the matchup. Modern is definitely in a state where you have a lot of times where you just can't beat everything, no matter what your rollout is. Like we had Kroxa with our double swamp, Blood Moon, ways to get stuff in the yard, Fable to help loot away to fuel Kroxa, but we just can't beat like Cling to Dust on our Kroxa, Fatal Push our token to stop us from getting green, Bowmaster to create multiple bodies, Karn is a colorless threat. Like just nothing you're doing about that. So you got to let some of these losses kind of roll off your back, because if you don't, you're going to get very, very mentally drained. I got Karn for a Worm Coil Engine, and yeah, we're not beating that one. We could like chump block it, but with the amount of life they're gaining, they're just going to be able to like ring until they find relevant stuff. So on to match number 4. I think somebody in chat yesterday, because we played against Mono Black another time, and I think somebody said they had a rough time against the combo decks. There's just like not that many combo decks in Modern at the moment. All right, so Grove of the Burn Willows means Hardened Scales. Decided to get the Goyf down. They Urza Saga, tap a mana, and scoop, so I don't really know what that was all about. Either way, going to sideboarding, trimming a bunch of Ragavans, couple Thoughtseizes, Bowmasters. Bowmasters like decent on the play, but if they just have a Hardened Scales, then Bowmasters goes out the window. So you don't want to like have a bunch of them in the deck. Ragavan just gets thrown in front of everything. Do decide to keep a one-lander. It's like, it's a one-lander with double Shadow if they have an aggressive start. Terra Sunder for something like Saga if I could just find a second land. Unfortunately, we don't find a second land. So it's a calculated risk. Very, very calculated risk. Clearly not the smartest risk in the world. But as we always say on stream, like I would rather keep these hands in the leagues and see if I can get away with it than try to keep it in like a premier event. Because I'm not going to keep that hand in like a challenge or an RCQ or something. But in a league, I'll give it a shot. So Blood Moon, Bolt, Kroxa. Pretty decent opening hand. Like obviously we don't have the fetches for our basic swamp, so we might not be Blood Mooning on turn 3. That being said, if my opponent just went for like Saga pass, then I might Blood Moon just to strip mine the Saga. Little buzz. Throw away the Blood Moon. It's not really doing a lot for me now. And I really like having access to these treasure tokens because now I can Goif, hold up, Tear Asunder, Terminate. Decide to kill the Zabaz in response to the Hardened Scales so they can't get extra counters on like the Hanger Back Walker. Then they have an Arcbound Ravager. So they could attack in here. And if I don't block, they go sack the Hanger Back. Arcbound's a 4/4. They make 2 tokens. Sack, it's a 6. Sack, it's an 8. Sack the Ravager to itself. And this is 12-13. So I'm not dead off of that, but pretty close to it. And they have to give up their entire board to do so. So pretty glad that they don't attack, which means that I get to untap, force the action. And we know we just get to like tear asunder whatever they put the Arcbound counters onto. So in this case, they put them on the Patchwork Automaton, which means I get to attack, make a treasure. That gives me the 4 mana to tear asunder and pay for ward. So we're already seeing these Fable of the Mirror Breaker tokens coming in a lot of handy. Coming in very handy. Doing a lot of work. You get the idea. And opponent scoops it up from there. Had the ability to get back Kroxa. We could Fable copy Goif. I do appreciate that since I've put Fable in the deck, I have copied a lot more than I ever thought I was going to, which is really cool to see. Like, I thought the card was going to be way too slow, not impactful enough, but with everybody else doing this, like, not dying thing, it's really nice to have a grindy, main deckable card that kind of filters your draws and gets you some extra pressure. So, opponent Kroxa's on turn 2. We'll ditch one of these extra lands. They get down a Fable, which means we can kill the token, get a big attack in with Goif, and now have Bowmaster in response to their Fable trigger. So either they have to play like another Bowmaster, or maybe not draw with Fable. Turns out opponent's not thinking the same way we are. They do decide to draw with Fable, escape Kroxa, which means we just have guaranteed lethal here, unless they had like an Invoked Fury. We get to attack in. They block the Goif. We've got 4 coming through, and the 5th off the Bowmaster ping. So, nice game 1. Love to see that. Tarmogoyf showing that it is clearly the superior threat to everything else in Modern. Despite what some non-Goyf purists might have you think. We already talked about sideboarding against Scam. Mostly Ragavans and Thoughtseizes coming out. Mostly any removal and Grave Hate coming in. Top deck Bolt on the Ragavan. Really nice. You could say lucky. It is a little lucky, but at the same time, we do have like 8 1-mana removal spells. So the odds of seeing one are greater than their odds of having Ragavan. Since opponent uses the Undying effect on the turn 1 Ragavan, we get like this Bowmaster block. They could Bowmaster our token, but that's okay because they're not getting an attack in, and that's kind of the important part. Like, honestly, I love seeing my Scam opponents use up their Undying effects on like a turn 1 Ragavan. Because between Goif and Bowmaster, Shadow, Bolt, Heat, like, Ragavan is about the worst threat in the mirror. Or I'll call this the mirror, like the Red-Black X mirror. There's just so many ways of standing in front of it, or trading with it, or just pinging it off. So Fury down some of our cheat boys. Pretty okay, because we can just kick this Tear Asunder. Like I said, I think Terra Sunder is really nice, really flexible, really shines in spots like this where you could take out the Fable, you could take out the Dolthy if there were more pressure on us. I did have to Google this in the middle of this action. So my opponent goes for the Undying on the Dolthy and then uses our Terra Sunder to take out the Fable. If you Dolphy into like a Terra Sunder, a card with Kicker, you can pay the Kicker as you cast it, but you have to actually like tap the mana to pay the Kicker. You can't just get the Kicker for free off Dolphy. But since it is casting it, you can pay the additional cost of casting it, which I thought was pretty cool. So we go into Unholy Heat down a token, dash Ragavan, which this should be lethal if they have nothing. Thankfully, opponent went to our turn before casting the Terminate, so we get to Veil of Summer for lethal. If they had terminated on their turn, we wouldn't have Veil of Summer up, and we would have been one sad panda. So yeah, that's Jund Shadow. Questing Druid came up like once. I think we cast it twice, maybe. The body is terrible. Like, if you're playing Questing Druid, you're playing it for the Seek the Beast side. How to phrase this? I like the additional card advantage that Questing Druid gives in the fair matchups. I do think it does a lot to kind of improve the consistency against decks like Scam and Murktide and opposing Questing Druid decks. Especially when we don't really have dead hits. Like, the Murktide decks playing Questing Druid can hit a lot of counter spells, and it can look awkward there. For us, it's either hitting a threat, a land, or a removal spell. And at least some of our removal spells, like Lightning Bolt, we can play pretty proactively, even if there's not a target. Less so for Terminate and Unholy Heat, but you get the idea. Sideboard. Chalice of the Void is a card that I recently cut. I kind of decided, like, I think I can beat the Rhinos decks regardless of Chalice, especially with EE in the board. But, like, Living End is going to be a nightmare matchup regardless. So I'm kind of relying on Ragavan, cheese out with Blood Moon, one Unlicensed Hearse, and some Spell Bombs, and just hoping. But you could run Chalice, and I do think Chalice is really, really good with Questing Druid, because you can a little more proactively seek the beast since your out is like a free spell. So if you're on Chalice, then Questing Druid does get a little more appealing. Again, Fable, Kroxa just win games. I don't know a better way to put it. I know it's tech that not everybody's on or everybody's supportive of. It is a little slow for a Shadow Shell, but so many matchups right now, you just need to be able to grind a bit. That being said, you are not going to be able to outgrind like the Beanstalk decks. So if you think your game plan against those should be, oh, jam 4 Questing Druids and pray, I don't think that's going to be enough to get you there. Again, that and Mono Black are two just like rough matchups. So the Beanstalk decks, Mono Black, Living End, all really, really tough. If you're expecting a bunch of those, I probably wouldn't pick up Jund Shadow, but who knows? Maybe you can have a hot run too. Either way, thanks y'all so much for checking out the video. As always, have a link down in the description of the Twitter in case you want to know whenever the live streams are happening. The Twitch, so you know where to go when you find out that that live stream is happening on Twitter. I have a link to the deck list and a link to the Control Freak Discord if you want to come chat Shadow, non-Shadow. As you've been seeing, we've been playing a lot of non-Shadow lists on stream recently, trying to expand our horizons a little bit. So if you have suggestions, things that you really want to see, things that you're really interested in, feel free to leave them in the comments, because I do, in fact, read all the comments and try my best to reply to as many as I can. So, as always, appreciate all y'all. Have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.